Currently, I'm seething with anger, to the point where I can feel myself trembling. Tonight, my suspicions were confirmed regarding who it is, and the length of time doesn't seem to matter anymore. Sherry has effectively obliterated our marriage, akin to squashing a bug beneath your shoe. Initially, I chastised myself for not seeing the signs earlier. Yet, after 8 years of marriage, betrayal isn't something you anticipate. The notion of drowning my sorrows in alcohol and confronting them crossed my mind, but why bother? My marriage is beyond salvage. He could probably overpower me physically, and with his connections, he could make my life a living hell, perhaps even more so than sleeping with my wife. So here I am, grappling with emotions that only someone who has experienced this level of betrayal can truly understand. I'm not interested in hearing empty platitudes like, "I've been through a divorce, I know what you're going through," or "I'm here for you if you need to talk." I'm not ready to share this with anyone just yet. What I need now is a plan. But I must first clear my head, and that's going to take some time. The thought of ever being intimate with my wife again repulses me. Just imagining her with him on our bed turns my stomach. At least she had the decency to carry out her affair in hotels, not in our own bed. So here I am, with a notepad in hand, contemplating my next move. If Sherry had possessed the stereotypical traits of a seductive woman, perhaps I would have been more vigilant, or at least attuned to potential signs. However, she doesn't fit the mold of a bombshell with a 36DD bust, long flowing blonde locks, or the statuesque allure of an Amazonian goddess. Don't misunderstand me. Sherry is attractive in her own right. Of average height, with short brown hair and a fit, lean physique. But compared to his wife, Sherry would rate no more than a 5, if that. So why is he engaging in extramarital affairs with my wife? Probably because he can. About 2 years ago, Sherry started working for Rogers Industries shortly after the birth of our son, Nettie. While I earned enough to support us comfortably, she desired the lifestyle and possessions our friends seemed to possess. "Tony, if I work, it'll ease some of the financial pressure on you. You won't have to work overtime as much, and it would be wonderful to have you home more often," she reasoned with me. My parents have offered to help watch Nettie, so I could even work part-time. Her logic wasn't flawed, but I felt strongly that Nettie needed her at home for at least a few more months. Little did I suspect she was already exploring other options. We encountered Will Rogers at a charity auction, courtesy of tickets given to us by my boss, who detested such events. I saw it as an opportunity for a pleasant evening with my wife. As he entered the room with his wife on his arm, all eyes gravitated towards him. Tall, handsome, and affluent, individuals like him exuded a nearly rock star-like allure. He effortlessly charmed the crowd, leaving most women, including my wife, swooning in his wake. "That's Will Rogers and his wife, Chloe," my wife whispered to me. "He owns 3 companies in town, and his wife used to be a runway model. The dress she's wearing tonight probably costs more than my entire wardrobe," she added, her voice tinged with awe. "But they probably aren't nearly as happy as we are," I reassured her, planting a kiss on her cheek. "Yeah, right. Wouldn't it be nice to have that kind of money, even just for a little while?" she mused. At some point during the evening, we were introduced. I can't recall how we ended up discussing our professions or Sherry's desire to re-enter the workforce, but the topic slipped my mind until weeks later when Sherry brought it up again. Will flaunted his wealth that night by outbidding everyone for the top 5 items. When I jokingly called him a show-off, my wife shot me a disapproving glance, asserting that he was doing it for charity. I remained skeptical. It seemed more like a display of his ability to do as he pleased. Individuals like him often crave the spotlight. One thing I did notice was that his wife kept a watchful eye on him and every attractive woman in the room. It appeared she didn't entirely trust her husband, or so it seemed. Regardless, 3 weeks later, I returned home to the news that Sherry had secured a part-time job. And where else but at Rogers Industries? They just launched a new department, and even though it's only part-time for now, it's likely to evolve into a full-time role within 6 months. she informed me with evident delight. Isn't it wonderful? I wanted to respond with a resounding no, but I didn't want to dampen her enthusiasm, so I put on a smile and told her I was proud of her. How did you come to know about the opportunity? I inquired. My friend Batty works there, and will ask her if she knew anyone seeking employment. She mentioned my name, and I emailed him my resume. I didn't want to say anything until I had the job secured. I had my interview last week and was offered the position the next day. Isn't it wonderful? She repeated, her excitement palpable. So, you'll be working directly under Will? I probed. He and I will be spearheading a new department, tasked with managing all the charitable endeavors of his corporation. That doesn't sound like a simple job, I remarked. Well, I'll be responsible for assessing all the charitable requests his companies receive and assisting in the selection of recipients for donations. It's quite a bit of responsibility, she explained. I'm sure you'll excel at it, dear. Perhaps we should go out to dinner to celebrate, I suggested. We don't have the funds right now, but soon, very soon, we will, she assured me. And so it began. From then on, it was all about Mr. Rogers this or Will that, and how virtuous a man he was. It nearly made me sick. Occasionally, she would have to accompany him on business trips to inspect various companies or locations, but they were never overnight. After all, we had Nettie to consider. Tony, I'll be out Tuesday night next week, she mentioned during dinner the following week. Will is considering donating a wing to a small hospital in Alabama. We'll tour the hospital and then attend dinner with their board that night. I'll be back in time Wednesday to pick up Nettie from my mom's house, she informed me. Why not just fly back after dinner? I assume you'll be using his private plane, I inquired. Mr. Rogers prefers not to rush the trip. Plus, if anything arises during dinner, we'll need to address it the following morning before leaving. It's just one night, she explained, flashing a reassuring smile. I wasn't entirely comfortable with the arrangement, but I trusted my wife. Will would have to be utterly foolish to make advances towards Sherry, considering what awaited him at home. I wished her a good time and anticipated her return Wednesday night. I'll probably need some extra affection Monday night, so I won't feel too lonely Tuesday night when you're away, I joked, and she made sure to fulfill that request, providing me with a week's worth of affection. When she returned Wednesday night, she topped up my affection reserves, and I felt contentedly oblivious. Our marriage seemed as solid as ever, or so I thought. Life continued. We enjoyed extra financial stability, but Sherry's frequent out-of-town trips, about every other month, and the approaching holidays started to weigh on my mind. Before I proceed further, allow me to explain my profession, as it plays a significant role in the events that unfold. I work for a company specializing in testing security systems and computer firewalls. We're the experts if you want to gauge the vulnerability of a system to hacking. With my background in accounting and computers, I primarily work with banks. Typically, a board member commissions us to attempt to breach or disrupt a particular division's security. We simulate hacking into their systems, access specific accounts, essentially fabricating a white-collar crime. About 65% of the time, we succeed, and the bank usually hires us to rectify their vulnerabilities. The most exhilarating experience I've ever had occurred about 4 months ago. Armed with a counterfeit passport from Panama, I sauntered into a local Bank of America branch to open an account. Upon meeting with the bank president, he meticulously guided me through the premises, fully aware that I intended to deposit $20 million into his institution. Expressing concern over security, I probed him for details, and he obligingly divulged his bank's security measures in exhaustive detail. Assuring me of the bank's impregnability, he unwittingly ignited my passion for a challenge. Armed with all the necessary information for fund transfers, I pledged to execute the operation the following week. With my partner Jimmy by my side, it took us no more than 2 days to infiltrate and disrupt their computer systems. Siphoning funds from 4 random accounts, I consolidated them into the new account I'd established under my alias company name. I promptly informed our client of our success, providing a thorough breakdown of our methods. Needless to say, they were duly impressed and promptly enlisted our services to rectify their vulnerabilities. Though the bank president wasn't thrilled with the outcome, he managed to retain his position. Such exploits comprise my profession, and as I've mentioned, I excel at it. Over the past 6 years, I've assumed approximately 8 aliases, complete with meticulously forged supporting documents. To the untrained eye, roughly 95% of individuals inspecting the documents, they appeared indistinguishable from the genuine articles. These documents would prove invaluable in the times ahead. About 3 weeks before Christmas, armed with a shopping list, I embarked on a spree for presents. Buoyed by a generous bonus, I planned to splurge a little extra this year. Among the gifts, I purchased a new iPod for my wife, and upon passing Victoria's Secret, decided to indulge in something special for her, or rather, for us, from the store. With assistance, I selected 2 tantalizing outfits. My hands laden with presents, I made my way home. With Sherry occupied at work, I seized the opportunity to wrap most of the gifts and discreetly stow them away. Sherry had returned home earlier that morning from an overnight trip with Will but hadn't yet found the time to unpack her suitcase. Since I had already finished my tasks, I figured I'd lend her a hand by putting away her belongings. Tossing her things onto the bed, I opened up the suitcase and began sorting through her items. As I sifted through the clothes, one particular piece caught my attention. It was impossible to forget. A fiery red ensemble with lace-trimmed crotchless panties. Even a man at death's door would remember that outfit. Besides this conspicuous garment, there was nothing else of note in the suitcase, so I carefully repacked everything and closed it up. If you've ever heard the term smoking gun, that outfit was mine. I had a pretty good idea of who, but it was the why that baffled me. We had a damn good life. It seemed Sherry wanted it all. That moment marked the beginning of our downfall. Had I not been the trusting husband I was, or if Sherry had bothered to tidy up upon her return, she might have gotten away with it, and I would have remained the oblivious, devoted spouse. That evening after dinner, Sherry expressed a desire to be intimate, but I managed to deflect her advances. I simply wasn't up for it, citing that I had a lot on my mind. A crusty pair of panties wasn't enough evidence for me. I needed something more substantial, not for my own sake, but to expose Mr. Rogers. Given my line of work, I reached out to a friend who had assisted our company in the past. It was a straightforward request. I needed him to keep an eye on Sherry while I was away on a business trip to Denver the following week. "Kevin, I need to know where she goes and who she's with," I explained. "I suspect she's cheating on me, but I need concrete proof." "Dan, Tony, I'm sorry to hear that. Don't worry, if anything's going on, I'll find out," he assured me. With my assistance, he bugged the house, her car, and even discreetly placed one in the lining of her purse. "Sherry, I should only be gone for 2 nights at most. I want to wrap up this project before Christmas so we can enjoy the full 2-week holiday period together," I informed her. "Plus, while I'm away, you can use the time to shop for my Christmas present. After all the nights you've been away this year, it better be something good," I added, hoping to provoke a reaction from her. She simply looked at me in silence. On Wednesday, I boarded my flight to Denver and gave Kevin the go-ahead. With Jimmy already there, we managed to complete everything by 6:30 that evening. "Come on, Tony, let's grab a drink or 2 and have dinner. There's a fantastic seafood restaurant just 2 blocks down from the hotel, and the waitresses are quite easy on the eyes," Jimmy suggested. "Give me 20 minutes and pick me up out front," I instructed him. I called Sherry's cell to let her know I was going out for dinner and might turn in early, hoping to catch her off guard. "What are your plans for tonight?" I inquired. "All I want to do tonight is take a hot bath after I put Nettie to bed, and then I'll probably just read in bed," she replied. "Love you," Sherry said before ending the call, but I couldn't bring myself to reciprocate. That part of our relationship had withered away, leaving only regret in its wake. Dinner was enjoyable, and Jimmy was right about the waitresses. After one final drink at the hotel bar, I headed back up to my room, noticing the blinking message light on my phone. It simply read, "Call me." "Tony, your cell was off," Kevin began as soon as I answered. I left it off deliberately. I wanted to enjoy one more good meal before you called. "So, what have you found?" I inquired. "She got a sitter and had dinner with Will Rogers. Afterward, they went up to room number 312 at the Ramada Inn. I couldn't capture any inside pictures, but I have them entering the room, and I'll capture them leaving as well. I managed to record some audio, but I doubt you'll want to hear it. He only rented the room for one night, so I'll monitor their activities from your home tomorrow. I'm sorry about this, Tony. There'll be no charge for this," Kevin explained solemnly. "She's going to regret ever crossing paths with that jerk." I muttered to myself, seething with anger. Now, I sit alone in my hotel room, plotting my revenge. Divorcing Sherry would be too straightforward. I need to strike where it hurts the most, and I know exactly how to do it. This Christmas will be one she'll never forget. By Thursday morning, I had my plan laid out. Most of it couldn't be executed until the 23rd, as everything would be shut down for the holidays. Armed with one of my counterfeit passports and my son's birth certificate, I booked airline tickets under my assumed identity. Opting for a circuitous route, I aimed to throw off any attempts to trace my whereabouts. Holiday travel is chaotic, with most people eager to book their flights and move on. I secured a cash advance on my credit card to eliminate any paper trail. I liquidated all 4 of our CDs from the safety deposit box and withdrew all available cash. Planning to travel light with just a carry-on, I needed funds to buy clothing upon arrival. The last item on my agenda took me 3 days to accomplish. Rogers Industries had connections with 2 local banks, one of which I held an account with. My plan was to hack into the bank's mainframe, then into Rogers' account, and transfer all the funds to our joint savings. Sounds simple, right? Wrong. I needed Jimmy's expertise for this task. Not wanting to implicate anyone else, I enlisted Jimmy's help as a backup for troubleshooting. I figured a trial run would be prudent before taking any real action. While we had experience with similar tasks before, navigating each bank's security measures proved to be unique challenges. On the first day, I hit a roadblock with the firewall, unable to breach it. With guidance from Jimmy, the following day I managed to penetrate the system, spending the ensuing hours combing through accounts until I obtained all the necessary numbers. My plan hinged on executing the initial transfer late on the afternoon of Friday, the 24th, from Rogers' account to mine, swiftly followed by electronically funneling those funds to the first of 8 overseas accounts. Precise timing was paramount. Maintaining a low profile in the final week, I gathered all the intel from Kevin, making copies for Sherry, her parents, my parents, and Will's wife, Chloe. I paid a premium to ensure their delivery on Christmas Eve, with the exception of my parents. Nettie and I decorated the tree and arranged all the presents beneath it. Since discovering Sherry's affair with her insufferable boss, I had been as distant as an iceberg, knowing she must suspect my awareness of her betrayal by now. I had packed a small bag with clothing and stashed it, along with a copy of Kevin's report, in the trunk of my car. I was fully prepared for the 24th. "Tony, you've been avoiding me all week. Are you okay? Is there something on your mind?" she queried, sensing the tension between us. It was time to set the trap. "Yes, Sherry, there is something I need to discuss with you, but I don't want to spoil Christmas for Nettie." "Let's wait until after the holidays," I replied carefully, laying the groundwork. "Well, at least you and I could have a little fun tonight. It's been a while," she suggested, attempting to distract me by unbuttoning her top. That's when I decided I'd had enough and metaphorically dropped the hammer. "What's the matter?" "We're too busy tonight," I retorted before pivoting and heading upstairs to the spare room. I closed and locked the door, then settled in to wait. There was a faint knock at the door, but I ignored it. "Tony, we need to talk. Please open the door, will you?" she pleaded. I'd sooner face a pack of Hell's Angels than engage in conversation, I thought to myself as I attempted to drift off to sleep. Eventually, exhaustion caught up with me, but I found myself wide awake just after 7 o'clock the next morning. Dragging myself out of bed, I took a shower, shaved, and prepared for what promised to be a grueling day ahead. I craved coffee, lots of it, if I stood any chance of making it through the next 24 hours. By 9 o'clock, Nettie was up watching cartoons and Sherry shuffled towards the kitchen. Her eyes were red, evidence of a sleepless night. I had reached my limit of caring. I just needed to endure until 2 o'clock in the afternoon before kicking off the next phase. "How long have you known?" she finally inquired. "Does it really matter, Sherry?" I replied wearily. "I suppose not. Is there anything I can say?" she asked, her voice tinged with desperation. "What could you possibly say?" "That was just sex, that you don't love him, only me, and that it was a terrible mistake. You could say all that and more, but it wouldn't make a difference to me anymore. I'm taking Nettie over to my parents this afternoon, and I don't want you to join us because you're no longer part of our family. I hope he was worth it, Sherry, but from where I stand, I doubt he was. Excuse me, I need to load up the gifts for my parents and get Nettie ready to go," I said, my tone laced with disdain. With the gifts packed in the car and Nettie dressed, I instructed him to give his mother a goodbye kiss. She remained oblivious to what lay ahead, and I had no intention of revealing my hand just yet. "When will you be back?" she asked tearfully. "When we return," I replied curtly. "Do you have plans to go somewhere?" "No, I'll be here when you get back," she murmured, her voice choked with sobs, as I closed the door behind us. "When's Sherry coming?" my mom inquired as we stepped inside. "Do you want the short version or the long one?" I replied as my dad took Nettie and headed towards the Christmas tree. "She's staying home because she's been having an affair with her boss for a while," I disclosed to my mom. Once the initial shock had subsided, I informed her that Nettie and I would be leaving for a while, and we'd be in touch once we settled down somewhere. "Mom, let's not dwell on it, and I won't have to deceive you," I urged her. "I'm going to make them pay for what they've done, each in their own way. So let's enjoy this afternoon together as a family, because I'm not sure when we'll have another chance." At 4 o'clock, I hacked into the system and initiated the transfer of the entire balance from Roger's bank account to our joint savings account with Sherry. By 6:30, Nettie and I were on the first of 3 planes heading out of the country. I can only imagine how many times Sherry tried calling my cell phone before realizing I wouldn't pick up. It was switched off and discarded in a dumpster 2 blocks from my parents' house. Just before boarding the next flight, I transferred the funds from our savings to the first overseas account. From there, it would be automatically distributed to 8 other accounts by early Christmas morning. I was going to bring joy to many children on Christmas morning. Glancing at my watch, I envisioned the surprised expressions on people's faces as my deliveries were made on Christmas Eve night. According to Kevin's evidence, Chloe reportedly kicked her husband so hard that he required medical attention to restore his assets. Sherry's parents were equally displeased with their gift, making it abundantly clear to Sherry how foolish she had been. By the time Sherry realized we weren't returning, she had received her package containing photos, audio recordings, and a letter from me. I laid out the details of how I had discovered her affair and expressed my inability to forgive her. "You don't deserve mine or Nettie's love, so you won't have it from this day forth. The house and everything else in it are yours to do with as you wish. Nettie and I will be starting a new life without you, and I only hope that one day I'll find it in me to forgive you. But I don't see that day coming for a long time," I stated firmly. "By the way, since you and your accomplice started your unholy union under the guise of donating money to good causes, I've decided to assist you both. The $1.2 million in their Bank of America account has been donated, in Rogers Industries' name, to 8 children's hospitals in developing countries. I've instructed them to formally express their gratitude to Rogers Industries 1 year from today. You can convey to your friend, Will, that I hope he enjoys everything, because you'll be the dearest mistress in his life. So have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I'd like to say that I'll see you around, but that won't be happening anytime soon. I'll keep Mom updated, so if you can stay on her good side, perhaps she'll pass them on. Finally, if you want a divorce, be my guest. I won't contest it. We arrived in Panama on Christmas morning. I had arranged in advance and rented a 2-bedroom condo just off downtown. I had managed to save enough from Rogers Industries money to cover our expenses. Although the cost of living was relatively low here, I knew I would eventually need to find some form of employment. For the first couple of weeks, Nettie inquired about his mom. But eventually the questions ceased. I hired a live-in nanny at a nominal cost, and the 3 of us formed our own little family. Despite a modest budget, I launched my own software protection company. Initially avoiding the larger banks, my reputation flourished among the smaller independents, leading them to seek me out for assistance. 5 years after settling in, there was a knock on my condo door. I knew it had to be you when I heard about a new competitor starting up down here. Jimmy exclaimed with a laugh. Aren't you going to invite me in? We spent over 2 hours catching up before heading out to dinner. It turned out that Rogers Industries' board of directors was displeased with their charitable donations and ousted my friend Will as the company president. He nearly went bankrupt, covering the $1.2 million loss, along with his divorce from his wife, Chloe. Sherry was terminated after it was discovered that the funds had passed through her savings account. Although they attempted to press charges against her, she was eventually exonerated. As soon as I heard about the debacle, I had a hunch it was you. I figured you had skipped town, and when I heard about the new competition, I knew where to find you. Jimmy explained as he handed me a contract. The offer from the home office is to either buy you out or bring you in as the head of the new Southern Division. The salary is based on U.S. standards, so you could live like royalty down here with much less responsibility. Give it some thought. I'll be back at the end of the week. Jimmy stayed with me for 3 days. We indulged in food and drinks, and he even found some Latin ladies to his liking. I sent him back to the USA with a broad grin, a signed contract in his pocket, and a letter for Sherry along with some pictures. Dear Sherry, as you can see from the photos, our son is growing up rapidly. He attends a small private school here and has become fluent in Spanish, perhaps even better than English. He's currently learning Chinese since about 25% of the students are of Asian descent. His computer skills are exceptional, and by the time I retire, he'll be more than prepared to take over from me. He knows about our separation, but I've never told him the reasons behind it. He simply accepts the arrangement that he lives with me while you reside elsewhere. For obvious reasons, I couldn't disclose my whereabouts to anyone, and I understand that both our parents were upset after I left. Mom mentioned she forwarded everything I sent to you once she got over her anger, so at least you know how Nettie is doing. For what it's worth, I've forgiven you. My new partner believes I was carrying too much emotional baggage, and it was time to let go and move forward. It's a pity things turned out the way they did because you would have loved it down here. I don't plan on returning because Mom and Dad are considering getting a place here, at least for the winters, so there's nothing left for me up there. If you ever want to see Nettie, you'll need to come down here, at least for now. Mom never brings you up and I don't inquire, but I do hope you've managed to recover after losing your job. However, I can't help but smile knowing that we'll lost everything. Karma, I suppose. That's all I have to say. I hope you find someone you can be faithful to and move on with your life. As for me, I found someone very special. She treats Nettie like her own and brings joy to my life, like you once did. We're not married yet, but it's on the horizon. Nettie will have a new sister in the spring, so it's time for me to take the plunge once again. You're welcome to write to Nettie if you wish, but this will be my final letter to you. Tony. Sherry struggled to read through the letter, her eyes damp with tears. In the aftermath, she cut ties with Will completely. Finding another job wasn't easy. The scandal had tainted her reputation, and opportunities were scarce. The men who showed interest were either not suitable or simply looking for a fling. She's currently seeing a salesman from out of town, but they're taking things slowly. Seeing Nettie looking well and content brought both relief and longing. Sherry yearned to see him, but finances had been tight since she lost the house in the wake of the housing market crash. She often found herself replaying the what-ifs, lamenting the choices that led her down this path. But dwelling on regrets offered no solace. All she had now were lessons learned and the hope for a brighter future. Thanks to everyone who took the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share your thoughts on the events in the comments below. Take care.